I'm sure at least half of the classes will do X-ray diffraction, either for your mini project or major project, or some many times in both cases. Half of the class will do X-ray diffraction, UV visible spectroscopy, IR spectroscopy, and now today we are going to see microscopic techniques to characterize nanostructured materials. I hope you are learning. Almost we are left with maybe one more unit or 1.5 more units. As I told, the last unit is mostly a summary of applications. I won't take much time. Okay. But if I complete this fourth unit, most of my jobs are done. I hope I'll be able to make it on time before your exam starts. So anything would like to add from previous classes? Make comments, clarifications, suggestions, additions. Any new knowledge you have gathered from any other place related to nanomaterials, or anything you want to correct? Shall we go ahead? So last 3-4 months, or at least 3 months, you learned something on nanomaterials, nanotechnology. Definitely how you started. And after 3 months or 2 months for some people, you gained some knowledge on nanomaterials, right? I hope so.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if not anything else, we'll go ahead.
Okay.
Anything else you would like to add? Anybody?
No, sir.
Okay. So is my screen visible?
No, sir. Right now it's visible, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So last class we have completed the structural and the spectroscopic characterizations. We have seen that X-ray diffraction can be very much used to study about the crystallographic structure or crystal structure. Since most of the materials are already known, you'll have to only compare the standard XRD pattern with the pattern that you got or going to get. If they match, blindfold and accept it is the material that you have generated, whether it is in the colloidal form or solid form. One primary aspect is they should be crystalline. You should be able to get the peaks in the X-ray diffraction pattern or patterns. It's not singular, it is patterns. What are those peaks called? Can anyone name? I should keep some surprise quizzes. Maybe it would have been nice if you would have had offline classes. Sometimes I do that. What are the peaks in the X-ray diffraction called? Okay, name the diffraction condition. Name the diffraction conditions. Condition. I should call by name.
Bragg's condition.
Yeah, Bragg's condition. Diffraction condition is nothing but Bragg's condition. Very good. Who is that? Alice. Very good. N lambda equal to 2d sine theta. This is the Bragg's condition for X-ray diffraction. N stands for first order diffraction. D is spacing, layered spacing. Interlayer distance or layered spacing. Theta is the diffraction angle. If you know all other things, including lambda, you should be able to calculate D spacing. A collection of D spacing is known as X-ray diffraction. The peaks are known as Bragg peaks. Bragg peaks. Okay. If the material is not crystalline, what will you do? You are going to get only baseline peak, fluorescent, no Bragg peaks. How will you know that the material generated is titanium oxide or silicon oxide or graphene or carbon nanotube or any other material for that matter? We know that only crystalline materials will show the Bragg peaks. What is the other material we are talking about? Amorphous, non-crystalline. They will not show Bragg peaks because they don't have long range order. They don't have long range order. Amorphous materials do not have the long range order. Whereas crystalline materials, they do have long range order. X-ray diffraction is a very good tool to characterize the materials having long range order. Whereas Raman and infrared spectroscopies are the tools to characterize materials having short range order or materials of amorphous nature. Very important point. Very important point if you are going to deal with the materials in near future. In addition to that, any adsorbed species on the material can be known by using X-ray diffraction. For example, you are preparing gold nanostructures, colloids. Colloid, anyway, for depending on the application, you have to convert into solid. When you do so, the unreacted materials or the protective agents that you have applied during the synthesis can be adsorbed on the surface of the gold grains. It may be partially decomposed hydrocarbons or adsorbed carbonate, adsorbed carbon monoxide, adsorbed water, or any other organic moieties, citric acid, etc. It can be well understood using infrared spectroscopy. Adsorbed functional groups on the material can be well characterized using IR spectroscopy. Can be complemented using Raman spectroscopy. You know that I already told that IR and Raman spectroscopy are complementary each other. Complementary each other. The information that you can get from infrared spectroscopy, or I should put it the other way, the information that you are not going to get from the IR spectroscopy can get from Raman spectroscopy and vice versa. That's why they are complementary each other. They are complementary each other. So today we are going to talk about canopy of the material. How the surface looks. How the fascinating surfaces of nanostructured materials look. I'm sure those who have attended my initial classes would have seen all these images. A click from a distance of a rose garden would look like this. I'm an old man, as I told, 45 years, not able to see any insect. There are young minds will be able to witness there is a bee at a distance. If you approach closer and closer, a very fascinating features associated on this insect can be very much seen. At a sufficiently nanoscale, such a character is associated with this insect. Maybe with young eyes, maybe you'll be able to see up to this. Beyond this, or from here, you'll have to depend on third party. It must be OM or EM. What is OM and EM? Optical microscope are also known as light microscope. EM is electron microscope. This is how the surfaces look up. For example, if you look at the head of an hand, it would look like this. Not it would, it looks like this. It appears like this. The blood cells they have this kind of morphology. Hard material, diamond, most of us like, most of you like, preserve it, expensive than gold, diamond. It looks like this. The steel that we use supposed to be strong, hard material. You see, when you look up very closer, it's not so. There are pores. A calcium phosphate, some compound, and its canopy looks like this. So the very surface nature of any material is known as canopy or the morphology. The human hair, as visualized from EM electron microscope, would look like this. Few micron thickness. Maybe length may be different depending on the human. And this is the morphology that you can get if you make non-structured gold colloids. As specifically says that it is stabilized, citric acid stabilized. It means someone has employed citric acid to reduce auric chloride into Rm, gold chloride into gold. And they provide Rme. Citric acid provides the Rme to the gold colloids or gold particles. So there is a numerical estimation. I'm sure we'll be able to work out this. Absorption maximum is there. The average grain size is there. Number of particles per ml is given here. Volume of the ml is given here. I'm sure we'll be able to calculate something else. You try. How many atoms can be there? How many gold atoms can be there in a grain? It is possible to estimate. There is a numerical problem in this small information. We have already witnessed when I say canopy of the material or morphology of the material, this is what we want. We want to characterize the mono-sized particles against its poly-sized particles. Now I don't have to define what are mono-sized and poly-sized particles, which we have done already. If all the particles or grains are having the same size, such morphology or such particle size is known as mono-sized, if not poly-sized. Similarly, identical shape, varying shape. If all the grains are having the same shape, whether it is a spherical or cubical, triangular, or etc., then it is identical shape, uniform shape. If not, varying shape. Identical shape, varying shape. Not only that, another intention in the synthesis of non-structured material is to prepare highly dispersed particles. It is possible to count. It is possible to see separate particles. One of the greatest challenges in nanomaterial synthesis. All these things that tech PhD students, I think she couldn't attend all these things. Highly agglomerated. Here, this is highly agglomerated. Those they are very good friends. They don't want to separate. They are always together. But here highly dispersed. The properties of this will be different. Properties and the features of these materials or nanostructure or canopy will be different. How will you characterize them? You need microscope. You need microscope. I'm sure you are aware that OM optical microscope, you can go up to 6,000 magnification, 6,000, 6K or 6,000 times magnification. From 1 to 6,000. 6,000 also I am exaggerating too much. Maybe 1,000 you will get a better image. Beyond that, it becomes blurred. You'll get something like this. There is some character, there is a feature, but the actual feature is not possible to get it, because that is the limitation of optical microscope or light microscope. Because optical microscope or light microscope is associated with inherently low resolution because of small depth of field. Even if you approach closer to the material, you will not be able to have a resolution. It will be blurred. That is the inherent nature of the optical microscope. Then, thanks to these great people who got Nobel Prize in Physics in 1886 itself, for using electron to capture the images. Electron can be modulated. Electron can be focused using magnetic field. By doing so, you'll be able to have a large depth of the field. You'll be nearly touching the sample, but not touching actually, but you'll be able to get very high resolution. You see here the same material or same feature, how you see with a high resolution that you could get maximum using optical microscope, but what are the additional features that you can get using electron microscope? Very specifically, scanning electron microscope, simply known as SEM. So when I was 11th standard, 12th standard, this electron microscope started popularizing. So we were all introduced to the theoretical aspects of electron microscope. I'm very much remembering in 11th standard, electron microscope theory and operations. These are the great people who gave the lead 1930. So using electron magnets, it is possible to focus the electron. Then came up with in 1986, electron microscope. We are realizing our practical electron microscope, Ruska and Roher. The major contribution by Ruska. You believe it or not, at least 3 or 4 Nobel Prizes were given so far exclusively for the development of microscope. Not necessarily electron microscope. It all started with the electron can be modulated to be influenced by the magnetic field. Then eventually led to the invention or discovery of the electron microscope. Very recently, 6 years, 7 years before, Gary and this Stefan, they got Nobel Prize for fluorescence microscope, development or invention or development of fluorescence microscope, otherwise known as nanoscope, because you can see that it is possible to map the molecules. Very much useful in biological applications. Those who are from biotechnology or biochemistry background will be able to appreciate these images. How the tissues are present. You can map it. In addition to that, you can also get their imaging, nano dimension, microscope at a nano dimension, nanoscope. It's still continuous. 2 more Nobel Prizes were given related to microscope. In 2017, for the invention of cool microscope. Invention of cool microscope. It is also known as cryomicroscope. Biological samples are stable at a low temperature. If not low temperature, they are not stable at a high temperature. They undergo prone to decomposition. But if you want to study their features, you will have to maintain at the required temperature. You will have to freeze it. Okay. Any organs are transported from one place to another place or need to be preserved. They cool at a low temperature, preserve at a low temperature. And at that temperature, you study the structure. This is the protein structure. Can be studied, can be mapped, can be imaged using cryomicroscope. It all comes under electron microscope. All comes under electron microscope. The origin is EM, electron microscope. In scanning electron microscope, instead of light or optics, electrons are used to image the surfaces. That's the main difference. It means that you will have to generate the electrons. Then you will have to accelerate the electrons. Then allow the electrons to interact on the surface of material. Then look at the surface what happens when the high energy electron is interacting with the surfaces. And if you can able to get information in terms of intensity, and it is then, that is what is scanning electron microscope, and it's a related electron microscope does or associated with it. It means it is possible to study the surfaces of any material, whether this surface or steel surface or any surfaces for that matter. It costs about 2 crores, minimum 2-3 crores Indian rupees. If you want to add many other accessories, it ranges from even 5 crores to 7 crores. So fortunately, we have one such equipment in the university. And there is a much finer equipment. At the end of this lecture, maybe this class or next class, I will tell another electron microscope. We will be studying about at least 2-3 microscopes. You'll have to pardon with me. So this is the greatness of electron microscope compared to the optical microscope. You will be able to get very high resolution, not just micron level, not just 100x. I should not tell 100x, 1K. Yeah, 100x or 1K. That is possible with only optical microscope or electron light microscope. But you see here, with the scanning electron microscope, it is possible to go even lakhs of times. And very much nano resolution is possible. If you remove electron microscope, the development on the nanomaterials and nanotechnology would have been ill-studied, less studied. Because we are not known how the materials or atoms, ions are arranged at the nanoscale. Whether they are arranged in a spherical manner or non-spherical manner, rectangular or wire type, etc. How would you know? How would you know? Thanks to this EM, electron microscope. Higher magnification is possible, larger depth of the field is possible in such a way that you'll be able to get not only the canopy, you'll also be able to get the chemical composition and also the crystallographic information. I tell you, the information that you can get from XRD, you can get much beyond that using electron microscope. It need not be only scanning electron microscope. If you integrate, if you have transmission electron microscope, you can completely rely with them or electron microscope. I would say X-ray diffraction study would be only supplementary. You will be able to get the crystallite domain sizes. Domains you will be able to see. It means in X-ray diffraction we are seeing 111 plane or 100 plane. You will be able to map, you will be able to identify the domain size, crystallographic domain size itself or magnetic domain size itself. It's much finer than the X-ray diffraction or spectroscopic technique. X-ray diffraction will give you what material it is, but scanning electron microscope combined with the energy dispersed X-ray analysis and this transmission electron microscope, you will be able to get what are the elements present. Not only what are the elements present, how much they are present, and what are their crystallographic orientation, whether it's triclinic, monoclinic, orthogonal, rhombohedral, whatnot. Very fascinating. It's a totally different concept in electron microscope. almost unlimited magnification you will be able to see. Instead of SEM, if you go for scanning transmission electron microscope. SEM. Yeah, I won't say sister microscope, maybe beyond that. But two different equipments. In scanning electron microscope, instead of light, electron beams are used to capture the images. How? Electrons are generated and they are accelerated, focused using magnets, electromagnets, then allowed to interact on the sample responses. Sometimes it may be scattering, sometimes it may be backscattering, or many times it may be transmitting. When the material does such information interaction with the electron, you will get these informations. What are the information you can get from SEM or electron microscope? Topography of the material. What do I mean by the topography of the material? Hardness, reflectivity, surface structure, texture, whether it is a smooth surface, hard surfaces, having pores, etc. What is morphology? It is interlinked with morphology. What is the size, shape, and distribution? Whether spherical shape, non-spherical, wired, tube, is there any defect? Very much used in semiconducting industries. If any semiconducting materials or devices are made and they are inspected using electron microscope, where the defect can be identified using electron microscope, not through our eyes. Our eyes have limitations. Even electron microscope itself has the limitation. Forget about our eyes. Even young minds, young eyes, we all have limitations. But the electron microscope, transmission electron microscope, can go beyond that. 3 lakh time you can increase magnification. 5 lakh time you can increase the magnification. When you do so, you will be able to see the chemical elements or elements are present in a material and how much it is present. You can quantify. You will be able to distinguish the nearby elements. For example, iron, cobalt, nickel. In a material, if all these three are present, it is possible to identify because the intensity of the transmitted radiation electron are different for these materials or elements. Very much crystallographic information you can get. These are the major components in the electron microscope. You need to have an electron gun, then condenser lens will condense, coherent, focus it. Then the aperture lens will further focus on the material that you are going to scan it. Okay, then you have to scan it, raster pattern, point by pointer scanning rather than the overall scanning. Point by scanning, point by point scanning. You will never miss any chemical information of the material. I think this slide will give you much better information. Electron gun, then using electron optics, electromagnet, it is the electrons are focused and further focused. Based on the magnetic lenses, it is possible to increase or decrease the spot size of electron. Depending on the spot size of electron, the resolution or the depth, you will be able to scan the material. You will be able to scan the material for its intensity of the backscattered electron or the just scattered electrons. In the case of transmission electron microscope, electron pass through the material, transmit through the material. Electron pass through the material. You need to have a very thin material for TEM applications. You will get much finer information. Much finer information. And this is a photograph of one such electron microscope. Inside this, all these are there. I think this is the take-home point on the components of electron microscope. Electron gun, mostly it is tungsten filament, or I think it is wolfram boride, Otherwise, electromagnet, to make it coherent, scan coil, sample stage where you will mount the sample. Then there are detectors, 2-3 detectors to detect the backscattered electron, to detect the scattered electron intensity in the case of CHEM, to detect the transmitted electron intensity, and you require high vacuum. Otherwise, if you don't provide a high vacuum, the electron beam will be scattered. It will not interact with the material properly. You will not be able to get the proper information. High vacuum is very, very important. I have extensively used it during my studentship days and also postdoc times. Okay, our lab or many of the lab extensively use this microscope. So this I already spoke to you. The electron has to be generated. Electrons have to be generated by some means. It may be a thermionic emission or field emission. Then the electron has to be made coherent using condenser lens, essentially electromagnet. How you can make it coherent on the optical light? Using lenses, optical lenses, the similar way you can do with the electromagnet. The electron can be made coherent. Focused. You can increase the spot size or beam size. You'll be able to get you'll be able to manipulate the magnification. Then allow the electron to interact with the sample. Something happens on the sample. What are those aspects that can take place when the electron is interacting with the material? Please wait for a few more slides. Or essentially, electron can be scattered, backscattered, or it can eject the secondary electrons. You impact an electron, it can pick up another electron from the material. Intensity, energy, direction of that electron will be different, and it gives much better information about the material. In all, the major components of electron microscopes are nearly same, but resolutions are highly specific or different. Optical microscope, there is a source, there is electron source here. There is a focus lens or condenser. Here we have a magnetic lenses. Then you need to have a sample. Okay, so you cannot get much higher information, higher resolution. You can get higher resolution in SEM. You can get very high resolution. Magnetic domains that we have studied in the first unit, you'll be able to manipulate. Crystallite size. When we studied about X-ray diffraction, you'll be able to get it. I have some information. Major components are same, but the sources are different, light, electrons. How one can generate the electrons? Either thermionic emission or field emission. What is thermionic emission? As the name suggests, thermo, temperature. Thermionic emission. Something is heated. Tungsten filament is heated to very high temperature, electron boils off. Or field emission. When we have a close proximity of two electrodes and a supply of very high potential, electron can boil off. Electron can boil off. This is the tungsten filament or lanthanum boride filament. Supply a very high temperature, electron can boil off. Or apply the very high potential between the electrodes, between the anode and the cathode. Then also the electron can boil off. You need to have again very high vacuum. You see, you are applying a very high potential at a very such, it is almost atomic thickness. This probe is almost atomic thickness. And if you manipulate this, there is another electron microscope, microscope, AFM, atomic force microscope. We will be studying that. You need to have a very high vacuum. Either field emission or thermionic emission, you will be able to generate electrons. You need to have a high vacuum. As I told that, electrons are prone to scattering. If it is filled with gaseous molecule or moisture, electron beam will undergo scattering. The purpose will not be served. Okay, and you will not be able to get the good contrast also. So you need to have a very high vacuum, ultra high vacuum. To start functioning of this electron microscope itself, you will have to start 1 hour before or sometimes more than. Then only you can start using them. It takes that much high vacuum to create, free from moisture, free from gas, argon or any other thing. It will ionize. Instead of scattering or back scattering or secondary electron scattering, it will ionize. Efficiency of the electron beam will be reduced. And this is what you get, magnification. Whether you are increasing the beam size or spot size, depending on the screen size that and the sample area that you are concentrating, you will be able to manipulate the magnification. Nothing but ratio between the screen size to the sample or specimen size. Okay, C is a screen size, your display size, and X is your sample area or the scanning area. And you can see that in the case of 10, you can have this much magnification. 1 lakh time, 3 lakh time. If the screen size is 10 centimeter, and if the sample is a few micron, the area that you are looking up, you'll be able to see the magnification very high. 10,000 times increased magnification. The size you can look up is micron. 1 lakh time, it is 1000 micron, 1000 nanometer. If you go beyond that, you can still have a lower, higher resolution. So lower size. With the TEM, you can go even 5 lakh times magnifications. Your scanning area is very low. Your display is very large. The ratio eventually becomes magnification very high. You can manipulate this magnification to have a low resolution or high resolution. How finer you can get it. Lower level resolution, we are not able to see the features. But if you increase the magnification to 15K X or 15,000 X, you will be able to see what feature it is. It's not very clear here. Low resolution, 2000 X, 2500 X. This is possible with the electron microscope. At 100 micrometer distance or the magnification, you see only this feature. But if you go at 100 nanometer, you'll be able to see this feature. Your electron microscope can provide this information. So like an optical lens, here the magnetic lenses focus the electron beam into the required beam sizes, followed by the condenser lens. And this works perfectly based on the same lens formula. And we know that lens formula 1 by S, F is equal to 1 by P, 1 by Q. Okay, so the object and your viewing eye. Based on this distance, you can have a focus using optical lenses. Similarly, you can use the magnetic field to focus the electron or defocus the electrons. If you focus the electron, you can increase or decrease the spot size. Lesser the spot size, lesser the area you are going to cover it. Larger the spot size, larger the area of the sample you are going to cover it. It works based on the same lens formula. Here, magnetic field. Okay, so objective lens further focuses the electron beam. This is what the focus and defocusing does with the magnetic lenses. Similar to the optical lenses. This is out of focus. out of focus, and this is focused, highly focused. We will not be able to get better resolution or better information from here and from here, but you will be able to get better information here. How will you control this? You control the magnetic field, the strength of the magnetic field. And it is a raster pattern. It's not overall area patterning. It's a point by point patterning. Sorry. It means you will be able to get very fine information on the material's feature on the surface. Point by point scanning. We call it as a raster patterning. Point by point, not just once. And this electron beam provides such facility to have a point by point patterning. I'm not getting that word. What is that? Scanning. Okay, so the electron interacts with the surface of the material and several phenomena taking place. I will come to that. What are the phenomena it can take up? So then you have to collect the intensity of the secondary electrons or backscattered electrons. If you will be able to collect those intensity and manipulate into a display, you will be able to see the image of the surfaces. And you will be able to see what material it is. Steel consists of how much iron and how much carbon, or brass consists of how much copper, how much zinc, or etc. Or the nanocolloid that you made consists of gold and anything else, or composites with carbon or non-carbon. You'll be able to see. Yes, I come to that. These are the phenomena taking place whenever an electron beam is allowed to interact with the sample. Similar image or information you would have seen when an X-ray is allowed to interact with the sample. That is different. This is different. There are X-rays. Here it is electron. In X-ray diffraction, it was X-rays, but here electron. You see here, the X-ray can be emitted whenever an accelerated electron is allowed to interact with the sample. X-ray can be emitted. It is characteristic of the material. Copper emits 1.54 angstrom. Molybdenum 0.79 angstrom. It's characteristic. If any surface emits 1.54 X-ray, blindfold and take, it is copper that is emitting X-rays. Similarly, OJ electron or Agar electrons, you'll be able to get the surface informations. What is noted in electron microscopy is the intensity of secondary electrons and the intensity of backscattered electrons. And of course, when the electron beam is allowed to interact with the sample, it can glow up. You'll be able to see the light emitting. And we call this as a cathodoluminescence. Luminescence, I'm sure you are aware of that. Something is glown. Phosphorescence, fluorescence. Similarly, cathodoluminescence. So, electron interacts with the sample and generates the light, cathodoluminescence. So, in the electron microscope, you monitor the intensity of the scattered electrons, or very specifically primary scattered electrons, and the secondary electron, intensity of the secondary electrons, and you'll be able to map the surfaces. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. So when I say the samples are allowed to interact with the electron beam, you know that the sample, after all, they all consist of atoms, ions, or molecules. Atoms, we know it is having a nucleus. Atoms, you know, they are making circle. They are revolving around the nucleus, making the orbital. Okay, so nucleus consists of neutron and the proton. Proton is positive, electron is negative. And on such material or such aspects, you are allowing electron to interact, which is a negative charge. What will happen? Automatically, you can expect a fight. You can expect a fight between the incoming electron having a negative charge and already the electrons which are already in the atoms, ions or molecules. They are also having a negative charges. They don't make good friendship, but they fight away, undergoing scattering. When the nucleus scatters, we call this as a backscattered electrons. When the electrons scatter the incident radiation, and it is a scattered electron. Both are characteristic. The intensity of these two electrons are different. This is how it happens. I'm sure you'll agree with me. This is one of the atomic models to explain the atoms. We have a nucleus, and the electrons are revolving on a particular path. Maybe there is a circular according to one atomic theory. In another atomic Niels Bohr also, it is elliptical. All those things. The point is, electrons are revolving, and an electron beam is coming from the source, and will hit on the sample and can eject this electron. The electron revolving already on the shelf can eject on electron. And there is a hole created. To fill this hole, the electron can jump from the higher energy to lower energy. When it does so, it will emit the X-rays. This is how you will generate the Roentgen ray X-rays. We have seen it already in the case of X-ray. But what is important is you note the intensity of these scattered electrons and the backscattered electron intensities. And you will be able to map the surfaces. You'll be able to map the surfaces. How much intensity you can get? It depends on this. Secondary electron intensity is related to this B, depth. How much depth you can focus on the sample. Based on that intensity of the secondary electron, you can have it. You quantify that intensity, convert that into image. Okay, image. This is how you'll get it. For example, this is the sample surface it is having. Okay, there is a smooth surface, there is a dip, a deep, or there is a hub canopy. And you scan the electron on this surface. The intensity of the electron that is coming from here and here and here will be different. The intensity will mimic the pattern of the surfaces. That is why you will be able to see the canopy, how the surface is, whether spherical or non-spherical, depth, porous, etc. Very interesting. If you note the standard secondary electron. But if you know the intensity of the backscattered electron, you can get much better information. You get much better information. You'll be able to distinguish nearby elements per se. Intensity of backscattered electron. You'll be able to distinguish aluminum and copper. Both are metals. Both are metals. Is this intensity of the backscattered electron highly dependent on the atomic number, whereas the intensity of the secondary electron is independent of the atomic number. It means any material you can map like this if you note the secondary electron intensity. But if you note the backscattered electron intensity, you'll be able to separately see how the aluminum is distributed, how the copper is distributed. The white spots are one material or element, gray or dark spots are another material or another compound or element. It all depends on the atomic number of the elements that is present in the sample. Whether you are going to get a very high secondary electron intensity or backscattered electron intensity. This is how. It is saturating. The secondary electron intensity is almost independent of the atomic number, whereas backscattered electron intensity is highly dependent on the atomic number. Maybe beyond 60, 70 atomic number, it is difficult. But less than that, we'll be able to distinguish the elements present in it. Let's take few minutes. What is that interaction that I am talking about when an electron is allowed to do so with the material? Someone has studied the interaction by simulation, Monte Carlo simulation. This is a simulation, and the name of the simulation used is Monte Carlo, a famous simulation technique. And they have mapped this electron interaction with the sample surfaces for 100 trajectories. And you see that, I'm sure you'll agree with me, it is a drunken man walk. Like a drunken man walk that we have seen in the case of metals when it conducts. 100 times how the electron is moving, this is how it moves. It means that there is an interaction volume. This is the beam of the electron interacting on the sample surface, and it makes up to this much depth based on the acceleration or the velocity of the electron beam, and based on the atomic number, softness or hardness of the material that you are using it. It's highly drunken man walk or zigzag. This is what it happens. So you allow the electron beam with low accelerating voltage. You allow the electron beam to with a high accelerated voltage. You'll be able to see that. I'm sure no explanation is required. Lower the acceleration voltage, lesser the interaction volume. Higher the acceleration voltage, so that the electrons are accelerated very high, you get higher interaction volume. What is the benefit of this? You will be able to get only very surface nature of this material if you have low accelerating voltage, if you apply. But if you increase, you will go beyond the surfaces. More information about the crystallography, domain sizes, you will be able to get it. Not only that, what material you are interacting with the electron on the surface also matters the interaction volume. Not only the accelerating voltage, higher atomic number, lower atomic number. Lower atomic materials, it is possible to penetrate larger depth of the distance. So more finer information you will be able to get it. Higher atomic number, maybe because of the limitations in the saturation, the backscattered electron intensity or saturated electron intensity, depth of the interaction volume is less. I think this is another version. You can get secondary electron intensity up to the depth 10 nanometer from the surface to inner. And backscattered electron intensity, you can go even 1 micron. And 5 micron, you'll be able to get X-rays, interaction volume. This is another version. Someone has clicked that interaction itself. You see, people are how crazy the people are working on electron magnetic field. We are talking about only paper, how much is the interaction volume it can make it, but people have mapped it. I think this I have talked about. So it is possible to know what material it is, how much material it is. It is possible to quantify cobalt, nickel, how much a percentage is present in a alloy. Whether cobalt and nickel, whether present or not, and how much it is present, it is possible to know if you know the intensity. Energy dispersive X-ray analysis or energy dispersive X-ray microanalysis. You'll be able to get crystallographic information in addition to chemical nature. I think this and all had a magnification, resolution. Okay, I think this is what important. This I already spoke to you. I think now you will appreciate these images. This image you can get from electron microscope. No other technique will be able to give you such information. Mono size information or poly-size information or identical shape or varying shape, it is possible to know from electron microscope. So if you remove electron microscope, how would you get this? No, not possible. Such advancement on the nanotechnology would not have taken place. You would have used nanotechnology, but maybe with poor knowledge. Now, thanks to these great people who contributed for the invention of electron microscope, whatnot, very much used in the topography, semiconducting industries. How will you know this defect? At 1 micrometer, if you don't use electron microscope, you'll be dealing with this defect only. What would be the performance? How it will affect the maybe transistor performances? Who knows? And this is what I told you. So it is possible to map even the nearby atomic number. Okay, aluminum and niobium can be mapped. Bright spots are one material, gray spots are another material using backscattered electron. It is highly dependent on the atomic intensity of the backscatter. Very important point. Intensity of the backscatter electron depends on the atomic number. 1 and 2 are different. 20 and 21 are different. You'll be able to map it. I think this descriptive so far I have spoken. It is you can see this. You'll be able to get the canopy of the material, morphology of the material, crystallographic nature, domain sizes, grain sizes, or particle sizes, and in the TEM, you'll be able to get much better information. In the TEM, I think I should be able to tell this. Yes, this is the same image. What do we see here? We see something like some materials are there, and it is having some features. You believe it or not, this is a composite. Nickel manganese layer double hydroxide embedded with or mixed with the carbon material. This SEM is a 2D material, or it can provide only such information, but TEM can provide even beyond that. You believe it or not, this dark grays or blacks are LDH, layer double hydroxide, nickel manganese layer double hydroxide. But this light gray are carbon material. You see, the electron microscope itself gives better information. Transmission electron microscope gives beyond that. Composition of any material, if anyone makes composites, the best tool to use it to confirm composite formation is not SEM, it is TEM, transmission electron microscope. So TEM, you'll be able to have up to 5 lakhs time resolution. And you need to have a very, very thin sample so that electron can transmit. When I say transmission, you should be remembering Beer's law or Beer-Lambert's law. We spoke in the first unit. Transmitted intensity. Light has to come out. Similarly, electron has to come out of the sample. When the electron has that feature, the intensity, energy, and all those things are different, and you manipulate it, and you are going to make TEM. Magnetic domain size, crystallographic domain size, lattice parameters, lattice fringes, all those information you can get. This is what I told you. 006, you remember now? 111 plane, 012 plane. You can quantify these distances. These planes that you get from X-ray diffraction, you can get from TEM or electron microscope. 006 is a carbon material. Both are complementary. This is the lattice fringes, the planes, Bragg planes, you can know. And this is electron diffraction. Similar to X-ray diffraction, electrons are also made to diffract. And the radius of this ring and the nature of this ring will provide you the information about the crystallinity and the phase of any material. If you can able to see the spots, you can blindfold and accept it is a crystalline material. And if you see diffused, you can see something like ring, it is amorphous. People are very crazy, I tell you. Material scientists wanted to utilize even such information for better understanding. This also descriptive, please read this. And then if anybody would like to ask any comments, clarification, you can do so. Any comments, clarifications, suggestions, additions? Tough to follow, right? This course is very, very tough. This fellow talks about many things. I'm sure at least 50% of all of you will use it. You'll use this technique in your mini project or major project. Any questions? Is this 0, 0, 1 and 0, 3 did not understand in SEM out, but this is not possible to see from SEM, definitely. As Sedaraman raised, 001 plane and 006 plane, it is not possible to see in SEM. It will give only the canopy, how the surface is. It will not be able to show the crystallographic nature. This is crystallographic nature, Bragg planes. 001 is the first plane of graphite, and 00 plane is the third plane of graphite or carbon material. 001, 003, 003, 006, 9, 012, the layers. It can provide how the surface is, but crystallographic nature you can get from TEM, transmission electron microscope. Electron must pass through the sample, thin layer of the sample. Yes, good observation, Sedaraman. You can take a teacher's role, Sedaraman. Your questions are very point. So, Behra, Ritlanjani, Behra, yes, for testing of sample is thickness of the sample is different according to the instrument. Yes, yes, very much. For SEM, you can have a powder, thin film, etc. You should not have a wet sample. You should have a dry sample. It may be a thin film or powder, but definitely for the TEM, you need to have a sample preparation. You need to have a very thin sample. Otherwise, it will not transmit. Electron will not transmit. So sample preparation for the TEM application itself is different. We call it as FIB, focused ion beam. It should be very thin. Yes. This is also good observation. Anything else? Yeah. For SEM, you can have sample powder. And you require very, very tiny pinch of the sample. And TEM also, much less sample, but it should be thinner so that electron can transmit. Yeah, so if no more questions, thank you. See you in the next class. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.